Hello, and welcome to On Point. I'm Jessica Harper. For many college students, graduation marks a huge moment of transition into adulthood, and many students count on internships to help them make that transition. But at the height of the pandemic last year, many internships disappeared. The job site Glassdoor reported that in April 2020, half of all internships opportunities have been canceled. Now, as employees slowly return to the office, many students are hopeful internships will return.
Opportunities are going to start opening up more. I feel like in the midst of COVID during 2020, it was extremely hard to find internships, but slowly as we're getting back to normalcy, I feel like it will soon be the same level of difficulty and opportunities to find an internship as it was pre-COVID.
So how did internships and student employment change during the pandemic? And as the vaccines prompt businesses to return to the office, have internships opportunities return as well? On Point's Dominique Isabeau has more.
Thank you so much, Jessica Harper. We are here today with several guests. We're here with Professor Stephanie Bluestein, who coordinates the internships for the journalism department at California State University, Northridge. We're also here with Deanna Medina, who is a federal work-study coordinator at California State University, Northridge. Joining us is Erick Gabriel, who is a current employee at E-Entertainment and a former intern, as well as a current intern, Zoe Ives, at KPCC and LAist. We are going to kind of talk about the pandemic and where that has left our internships for students, as it's a very important part of the journey as a student into adulthood and on the early entry career path. So I'm just going to go right into it for you guys. So I want to right now ask Professor Stephanie Bluestein, what do you think is the importance of internships for students in general, if you were to just let someone know what you think internships mean?
Internships are the difference between a student who has a bachelor's degree and a student who has that bachelor's degree, but then they have an internship. So those internships help students stand out, because often for career jobs, a bachelor's degree is the minimum qualification. So I always tell students, how do you make yourself stand out? And that is by having one or more internships.
Thank you for that. So, Deanna Medina, in your experience, where do you stand in terms of the opportunities for employment for students? What do you think of the importance of that is?
Similar to internships, student employment offers students a work experience that, combined with their degree, will set them apart with other candidates once they start seeking those professional positions. So in addition to not just any job, but it also is the quality of the job that they're performing. So the specific types of experiences that the student is going to be gaining, whether it's through an internship program or a paid job position.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So Zoe, you're currently an intern as we speak right now. What do you think the importance, or what have you learned right now in your internship that has brought value to you?
So many things. It's really beyond what I could sum up here. I guess just the experience, opportunities to network with people in the field that I would like to potentially get involved in. It wasn't exactly what I thought I was getting myself into, but in a very good way, and it's ended up informing a lot of my ideas of what I want my future career trajectory to look like. So it was a little bit of a surprise, but a very pleasant surprise. So I'm fortunate in that aspect.
Yay, that's so exciting. So Erick is a former intern. Erick is now actually a full-time employee at eNetwork. He was hired after his internship, which is amazing. Erick, what do you think the importance, especially with your transition after you graduated from CSUN, what do you think the importance of internships is for students?
I think kind of like Professor Bluestein said, I think internships are so important. It definitely gives you that leg up in your career, especially right after college. Like you said, I am full-time back at E Entertainment, and I'm actually on the team that I interned with prior. So I definitely know that if it wasn't for that internship, I more than likely probably wouldn't have come back full-time and be asked to come back full-time. So I do think that internships are really, really important, especially just so you get your foot into the door directly right after college. It definitely sets you aside.
So, Erick, thank you for that. I'm actually going to send another question back out to you right now. You had actually started interning the semester that the pandemic, or you were interning during that time, that everything closed down due to COVID-19. Can you tell me really shortly just a little bit about what your experience was when that happened and how you kind of transitioned?
Great question. It was definitely an interesting ride. Obviously, as you know, we are still in the pandemic, so we still are riding that wave, so to speak. But it was really interesting because I actually was my last semester in the grad program. Obviously, last semester in the internship, I was actually doing some traveling for my thesis project. Made it literally a day before the border closed, and that was the week that we were still in the office. I returned back to find out that we were working from home already. Luckily, we had prepped maybe a day or two before I left for my trip. So it was definitely a very interesting and weird transition going from the office directly into working from home. But I would say that it was a very great learning curve. I was able to really, I think, become very adaptable and learn to need to be adaptable in terms of the internship as well as school. So I would say it made me just be a little bit more understanding and, like I said, just being as much as adaptable as I could be.
That is so amazing. Now, Professor Bluestein, I'm going to throw it out to you. In your respective role as one of the coordinators for the internship program in the journalism department, when we look back when everything shut down during the COVID-19 pandemic, what were your thoughts? What was your experiences? Did you have any fears? Or I know, it was just a crazy time. Can you tell me a little bit about that time?
At that time, we had about 17 students in the journalism 494 internship class, and 12 of them were public relations students, 2 were broadcast, 1 was doing a photo internship, and 1 was doing magazine. So the majority were doing public relations internships. And for the most part, those students were able to pivot very well. The PR firms pivoted pretty well. There was one firm that had a lot of clients that serves the fashion industry, and that internship had to end early because they just didn't have any work for our student anymore, because the fashion houses, as they're called, didn't need any PR at that moment, because everything had changed. But PR firms that dealt with medical related topics, they were buzzing. And so our students had to go from the office to working from home. And that was a challenge. The good thing about that, some of them mentioned in their final report at the end of the semester, that they improved their time management skills. They improved their self-discipline skills. They learned a lot of other forms of communication, such as Slack, that wasn't really being used in the office because it didn't really need to be used. They became more concise in writing their emails after the pivot happened. And even going beyond that semester, from here on out, students are now allowed in our program to do remote internships. And we were not too keen on those before. We just wanted students to be in the workplace and taking it all in. But we now see that there is some value in remote internships. And I had a student doing an internship for a firm in Texas, and they were here in Southern California. So it opened up a lot of avenues for students. That said, there are not still as many internships as there were before the pandemic, and that may be a little bit of a reality for a while. But there was good, there was bad. Some students talked about that they didn't get the skills that they had wanted. to learn, and moving back home made it hard with all of the distractions in their particular home. Communication was difficult. Sometimes they would get forgotten about for a few hours, out of sight, out of mind. But there was good and there was bad.
Yay, thank you so much for that, Stephanie. So, Deanna, in your respective role, you have to, be in contact with a lot of students who are in employment positions, student assistants, right? With those opportunities. What was your experience when everything shut down? None of us were prepared for this. What was kind of your experience again in your respective role when everything shut down? How are the students reacting? How were you as administrators reacting to this? Tell me a little bit about that.
So here at CSUN, we were fortunate enough to be one of the universities that, although we sent our students, all of our student workers, home the week after spring break of what was that spring 2020 semester, but they continue to stay on payroll through the end of the spring semester. So although our students weren't actually physically working in their positions, they were still receiving a paycheck through the university through the end of the spring semester. That wasn't the case with other universities, which I am in contact with. So initially, it didn't really affect students too much because they were still receiving that paycheck that they've come to expect. But once the spring semester ended, that's where things shift, because the priority for remote work here at the university was to get our staff set up and in place to work remotely. So our students, departments across campus were not prepared to hire a student remotely. So therefore, those student positions didn't open up as quickly as, without having the pandemic be a factor would have happened in a regular semester. So the fall semester would definitely impacted students in the fact that there was a drastic drop in opportunities made available to students on campus. The opportunities really didn't start to come back until spring 2021. Because this is when now departments had to figure out this is no longer a short-term plan. They needed to prepare for long-term plans. So those were some of the shifts that happened, not only campus, but just nationwide across universities.
Thank you so much for that, Deanna. So, Zoe, in your current role, you are an intern right now. With it being kind of mid-post pandemic, were you scared to go into your role as a current intern based on what you heard, or were you afraid you weren't going to find a position? What was kind of your experience looking for and finding the internship and now working remotely?
I think my experience as far as finding the internship and securing it was pretty unique. I had connections through my current school paper. KBCC used to be based on my college campus, and so they have an allotted number of internships that are available to PCC students every year, and I just so happened to have connections that allowed me to secure that, an interview with my now boss, and then that led to me getting the position. But I don't think I would say that I was scared necessarily about working during the pandemic. I was an essential worker prior to that. I worked at a grocery store, so it actually kind of provided a welcome release from the kind of chaos that environment was at that time. And I started in early January. So I think I was very much looking forward to having an opportunity to work remotely because I saw it obviously as being much safer than the alternative, which is what I had been experiencing. But I mean, in any kind of like new job internship situation, it can be nerve-wracking trying to get to know people and establish yourself as an employee and somebody who's like a capable employee. And I think definitely remote work it is a challenge in that respect sometimes, just because you don't have as much direct in-person access to your colleagues as you would in a office in-person environment. Yeah.
Thank you, Zoe. So I have one more question for you. Your classmates or friends, did you experience that they had a harder time finding internships? Like, I know that you'd mentioned you had connections, so you were able to land that internship role, but had you seen that it was harder for some of, say, your classmates or your friends, or what was kind of your experience, maybe that you'd heard around?
Definitely. I think securing work, especially in this field, has been pretty difficult. At least to my understanding. I think it's hard to really speak for other people, and I don't want to do that really, but I'm currently looking for internship opportunities now, so I can tell you that that has been slightly challenging, just because it's kind of the constant, like, is this going to be remote? Is it not going to be remote? What can I really be expecting from this position? And how can I kind of like angle myself to be the best fit for this role? And so trying to kind of navigate that has been interesting, but yeah.
Awesome. So, Erick, I know previously when I'd heard you speak before, I thought that you had mentioned that some of the other interns, like at maybe it was at NBC or at E Network, like they had lost their positions when the pandemic happened. Was that something that you experienced where maybe you saw in other departments because maybe they weren't prepared, that they let their interns go, and then they kind of like what Deanna had mentioned, hadn't really been prepared at that time, but then slowly started having interns come back? Like, what was your experience with that over at E Entertainment?
Yeah, so I do know that after my internship, we, at least on my specific team, right after my internship, we had one intern right directly after me. And then I know after that intern, we stopped completely having internships. So I do know that a lot of positions were concised down at E, as in every sector, which I know a lot of companies did the same things. A lot of jobs got cut, a lot of people got furloughed. So I do know that my internship was cut from my team. And I do know some other internships that were on the news team were also cut, because obviously fundings were lacked. Red carpets were not a thing for 2 years up until now this year.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of money had to be allocated to different places. But I do know that now we are seeing a little bit more jobs kind of popping up. Some internships are popping up, especially like I think on the news team, there's some internships that are now popping up again. But it is slowly kind of trickling. You can see kind of picking back up.
Thank you for that. So, Professor Stephanie Bluestein, I know that I had been researching a little bit that when you guys had been transitioning students in the intern program, you'd offered maybe a portfolio option instead for students who couldn't find internships, right? Because we obviously have all seen that there may not have been as many offered, or a lot of companies were downsizing and again weren't prepared necessarily for that beginning transition. Can you tell me a little bit about how you as a department, you guys were able to pivot to offering that other option for students, and how that maybe affected them academically?
So in fall of 2020, which would be the first full semester into the pandemic, we offered the portfolio option, as we call it, for students who were enrolled in the internship class, but were unable to get an internship by the end of the third week of the semester. Normally, they would have to have dropped the class because you had to have an internship to be in the class. But had we been rigid like that, we would have ended up canceling the class, because about 75% of the students in the class did not have an internship. So those who did have an internship, we certainly didn't want to leave them in a lurch. And then we also wanted to be able to provide this portfolio option for the other students. And it's worked out so well. Is allowed our students to leave our program with an online portfolio to showcase their work that has been reviewed by myself and also a professional journalist or public relations person. And in addition to doing that portfolio, they also do dozens of hours of free online tutorials of their choosing to help just improve their hard and soft skills. And so they present a proposal toward the beginning of the semester. I look it over. Yeah, it looks great. And or I'll make some suggestions, and then they just take off, and they're working on these tutorials on their own. I say free because they are not required to spend any money, and because of CSUN having a connection with LinkedIn Learning, all of those courses are free to them. And from what I have heard from the students, they love it. They benefit from being able to have the time to work on some of these skills, whether it be writing, editing, video editing, time management, conflict resolution, communication skills that somehow they just don't get time to do otherwise. Mm-hmm. And this has compelled them to do that, and they feel a lot more ready for the full-time job market once they will graduate. So it's been really quite a benefit to those students as well.
Thank you for that. So Deanna, a question for you now. In your respective role, you had kind of mentioned earlier that at the beginning there wasn't a lot of employment opportunities for students right kind of after the pandemic happened. Where do you see students right now? Are things getting back to normal? Do you see students still struggling to find employment, or where have you kind of seen us land right now? And do you think that employers are still going to be allowing students to work remotely, or what have you seen or kind of heard about that?
So a couple of things. Students are still struggling, and actually more than students, employers are struggling to recruit student workers because, as you know, our classes are still online, so not many students are coming onto campus. So those employers that do have on-campus employment opportunities are not having many applicants because students just don't want to come to campus because they don't have to. So we'll see what the spring semester brings. So it's actually the reverse, is the employers who are struggling. I'm also part of an on-campus employment, student employment committee. And so this is not exclusive to work-study employment. This has gone across the board to all campus positions who are struggling. As to your question, do I see employers possibly shifting to offering remote positions? Probably not. I think student positions are meant to be on campus. However, I can speak for our department. I know that we are struggling for physical space just because staffing is growing. And so we are going to start seeing more shared workspaces for students that will maybe eventually open up the door for those remote positions. But as of this moment, I have not heard any department or employer permanently making a shift to exclusively offer a remote position. I think it's because of the circumstances that those positions are being offered at the moment.
Thank you for that. So I'm going to throw it over to Zoe. I want to ask you guys maybe one more question, and I really would love to hear your thoughts on this. Where do you see the future of internships kind of going? Leading off of what Deanna had said, she had mentioned that a lot of employers actually aren't going to be offering virtual opportunities for students. I mean, Zoe, have you wanted to maybe be in person, or do you think that the future of the type of internship you're in, that they should, maybe also be flexible in terms of letting you guys work from home? Or where do you kind of see, or where would you like to see the future of like your current internship kind of land?
Yeah, like Professor Bluestein was saying earlier, there's kind of like a good and a bad. There are pros and cons to remote work. I think in my experience, I would have preferred to have done my internship in person for a number of reasons. I think when, you're in a workplace where you're distant from your coworkers, it's kind of like isolating. So there's this aspect of workplace isolation, and that kind of leads to opportunity loss. So in my experience, I've been very fortunate. I've been able to do a lot of great things with my internship that have really informed my perspective on this profession, but I didn't get the full experience that I had initially wanted to get out of the internship. And so it's a trade-off. It's like, on the one hand, like, yeah, it was much safer. Obviously, it was the only option at the time. I took it and I don't regret taking it. But I think if anything were possible, I would have loved to have done it in person. And I think in terms of like a permanent shift or just any shift to remote work, I mean, in my current workplace at KPCC and Southern California Public Radio, I think they're much more lenient now than they ever have been before. And I do foresee that lenience being permanent. I don't know if that necessarily means that they're going to be establishing fully remote positions permanently, but I do think at this point in time, like if you have childcare responsibilities, if there are things that come up where you need time or you need to be remote, I think that it's a much more lenient working relationship with time.
Erick, I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think that you, having maybe worked remote in your former internship position, do you think that showed the employer that you are versatile? Do you think that was something that maybe they appreciated and they saw in you as something good, or an aspect as a future employee that you were able to shift, and it was a versatile thing? Do you think that was something that maybe, I don't know, maybe helped you land the position, just to kind of give hope to our future interns and their work perspectives? Give me a few, we have about probably a little less than a minute. Give me a little quick answer about that.
Yeah, so I definitely would say that it helped me a lot, just because I actually, since I had already just interned there prior, I had already known the language of NBC, kind of how things already ran, and I had already had experience working remotely from home. It just gave me that extra boost of, okay, we don't really have to teach him this. We don't have to teach him the ropes. He's already worked from home. He's already comfortable working from home. That definitely, I think, gave me the ultimate, okay, he's the choice for the role.
Thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate it, you guys.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for watching On Point. You can watch us on Santa Clarita Valley Television and on LA 36. You can hear us on KCSN 88.5 FM on Sunday mornings at 5:30. And you can follow us on social media at CSUN On Point. For us here at On Point, I'm Jessica Harper.